Right, the thing about that is, on there, when you look at that on there, that might appear quite obvious. But I tell you what, if you go and drop that in the edge there, where there's all weed, that will sit like that. And the thing about a pop-up is, no matter how many times that carp pisses about with that, a roach pisses about, that hook point is always fishing. So that's what I call my always fishing rig. You cast out. The bottom of the lake is not like that. The only way the bottom of the lake is like that is in rig books, because in rig books it's always clear, the carp always comes in the direction of the hook, and it never ever tangles, right? But if you imagine that on the bottom, if that was a bottom bait, any amount of weed will cover your hook point, especially when roach and bream and chub are pissed about with it. That gets weed on it. That carp cannot hook itself on that, because it gets, you've seen, how many of you wound in your hooks and they're covered in that crap? You imagine if that's on the bottom, that carp cannot drag that. You can sharpen that hook up till it's as sharp as anything. If that's got weed around it, it's not that thin, it's just a waste of time. So the reason why I use a pop-up, and that is popped up, is so that the hook point is always exposed. So that is always fishing. So from the second that goes in the water, if a bream pisses about with that, unless that bream hooks itself, that hook is always fishing. And if you drop that in the edge, that, believe you me, if you fish that pop-up that far off the bottom, that might look quite obvious, and a carp may go, whoa. But if you fish that as I fish it like that, if you think about a carp, even the ones that we've seen caught today, they don't go along like that and go, oh, that's 5 millimeters off the bottom and not having that. That carp don't know that's on the bottom in the normal, even out here, this isn't a particularly weedy water. That carp has got no clue that it's not on the bottom. Think about a carp shape. It's not an eel that goes like that. It don't go on its side. Even a 15 pounder is a big old fish. It can't swim with its eye on the side like that and see that it's not on the bottom. It's just a fallacy. A lot of the stuff you read about works only in rig books. So if I'm writing a rig book, I have got to write about 1,000,001 rigs and stuff like that and come up with all sorts. And you'll think, wow, this guy knows his rigs. You might go away and think, Jesus, that guy only knows one rig. I don't care that you might think I'm a bit, bit behind the times. I know that works. And so if any of you go away to think, I could do just what he can do, that's great, because I don't want you to go away and think, oh, he's ahead of me. You might think, oh, he's got 1 or 2 edges on me, but I can duplicate what he does. That's all I want you to do. I don't want you to go ahead and think, he blew my mind, because there's nothing I've told you today that none of you can't do. Everything I do, you can do. And that's the great thing about carp fishing. I can give you Valentino Rossi's motorbike. You ain't going to do a 1:17 lap. You're probably going to do a 2:30 lap if you don't fall off. But I tell you what, if you go here and put yourself in a swim where the carp are and cast that out, which you can all do because you can cast, that carp doesn't know if it's Julian Cundiff, Dave Lane, Jamie Clossack or Don Smith on the end of that. That's a great, carp fishing is a great leveller. Yep. There's no other sport. I can give you, I can give you Agassi's bloody tennis bat. I can give you Graham Gooch's bloody cricket bat. I can give you, David Becker's football boots. You ain't going to do what he does. But in carp fishing, it's the greatest leveller because you can have, there's nothing there that you can't do. There's no real edges in carp fishing. There's nothing that none of you can't do that I can do. Mm-hmm. So, if you go away from the carp cast today and think, God, I can just, he might have caught thousands of carp, but he don't really do anything special. That's great, because that's what I want you to do. I want you to think that. I don't want you to think, oh God, he's a bit ahead of me and I'd never be like that, because that's just bull. Any pros who try and give you the impression that they're a little bit better than you are very boring. It's, they are not a little bit, they've got more experience than you, and that's it. But the rest of it, you can all duplicate. So this is the rig that I catch most of the carp on. And I'll sit on here and tie it up for you. It's the multi-rig. It's really, really, really simple to tie. Right, whatever I use, it does not mean, gather around if you want this steady, it does not mean that you have to do exactly the same. So the first thing is the hook design. I use the Fang Twister. It doesn't matter what hook you want to do. I'm just happy with these. Some people use the Fang X, some people use the Fox, whatever. All that matters is that it works for you. Now, what I would say to everybody is, unless you are confident in the rig that you've got, to me, if I wasn't confident, the first thing I'd do is copy exactly the bloke that was doing it as long as I understood why I was doing it. And then after that, I might think, do you know what? I like that hook, but I might change it to such and such because I like how that sits. So I know he uses that hook length, but I prefer that hook length. That's great. Always start with a starting point and vary it. So whatever you see me use, I didn't start off with it like this. I started off with it. In fact, I would imagine that every single bit I'm using is different from what I originally started off with. But by now, you are seeing probably 8 years of evolution in that. So that's probably 8 years on. Every single thing in there is probably different to what I started off with. But it's the same basic principle. It's just that I've now found what...
Well, I don't know.
No, I'll show you exactly what I do. So the hook thing, the thing is I use what is called a fang twister. Do you need to sharpen them? Well, anybody who's, I mean, that is a sharp hook. If you sharpen them, they're even sharper. The one thing about sharpening hooks, if you've got any bream, tench, roach or chub in your water, it is a chuffing nightmare, because you will find all of a sudden you are getting a lot more bream because they will mouth your baits and that hook will prick them. That will prick them straight away. Anything like that. I mean, I've not even tried to prick. There's no lead on there and that pricked myself straight away. If you have got a lot of nuisance fish in your water and you start sharpening your hooks, you better get used to no sleep, because you are going to get bream after bream that mouth your bait and prick themselves. So the only time I use sharpened hooks is if I'm fishing a water without nuisance fish, because otherwise it will drive you mad. I mean, that hook is sharp enough to hook 90% or 100% of the fish you hook. It doesn't matter what hook length what hook you use, but that's the favourite one. Hook lengths, again, it's whatever you're confident in. The hook length is the bit that hooks the fish against the hook and the lead. I've used various hook lengths. There's got your Nash ones, you've got your Fox ones, you've got ESP strip tees. It's whatever you're confident in. I like the Nash wheat green one. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever you're confident in.
It's supple braid?
No, it's a coated braid.
But a supple coated, not like a really stiff.
There's one. The only one that is super stiff, I think, is it the Fox. Give me a clue on this.
Camotech stiff.
Camotech stiff. That is so stiff. It is too stiff for. Ideally, you want a hook length that is about like that. If it's too stiff, if it hits anything, it tends to sit off the bottom like that. If it is too soft, it tends to have too much of a loop in it. So what I want is a hook length that is supple enough that it doesn't stand up like that, but it just sits down perfectly. So for me, the two that hook nearly pricked myself on that. The two that I use are either ESP strip tees in brown or the Nash Combi in green. It's whatever you're confident in. You're not trying to sell you this. So it's always a coated braid. First thing you do is just tie a bog standard, I don't even know what that's called.
Overhand knot.
Overhand knot, yeah, that's right, yeah, overhand knot, okay. Bog standard overhand knot. And then, again, I'll say, does anybody not know to tie a bog standard overhand knot? It is absolutely dead simple. It just simply is. All you're doing is forming a loop and just tying a knot like that and through itself.
Just a hair knot, isn't it?
It's a hair knot. That's what I was going to call it, a hair knot. Okay. Now the thing with it's dead easy. The thing with that is, ideally, the knot needs to be just big enough to go over the top of that. The bigger the loop is, the higher your hook will naturally be off the bottom. If it's too small, you won't get it over that anyway. When you've tied enough, you could do it second nature without thinking. But the first time you tie it, you will inevitably tie too bigger a loop or too small a loop. The more
you do it to obviously the pattern and size of the...
Exactly, yeah. So a good idea is when you've tied the loop, just look at the loop and say, will that go over the top? Yes, it will. If it won't go over the top, you're never going to get anywhere. So you've tied your loop, just get a pair of forceps, and all you're doing is just bedding your loop in. Don't pull it tight, just bed it. That's it. That's it. You do not need to. If you pull it rigid tight, you will break that and it'll what I call flop over. That because of the way it is can only ever tighten up on itself. It can never undo itself. Get a pair of scissors and trim it off. You do not need to super glue that, because all that can do ever is tighten up on itself. This is a little thing I came up with myself. I've seen it now. Somehow you've got to push that through the eye of your hook. Now, when I first started doing this, it was absolutely, you were trying to push that through there, and it used to drive me mad. And so I ended up using a hook with a bigger eye, but then it didn't stay. And so I just came up with this very, very basic, simple idea, which is so simple, it's just crazy. All you're doing is you are using a bit of dental floss. The dental floss goes through there like that. And you want that, lick it, that goes through there, like that. Okay? Pull it through. That is such a... I should have... If I was Corda, I could paint on that. Darling!
What price would you put on it?
No, that is such a simple... You imagine, I have spent afternoons trying to do 6 hooks, and you end up, oh God, I'll use a size 3 hook, and then it'll go through. But that is such a simple thing to do. Right, the next thing you need to do, and it's called the percentages game, is make sure that is not looped. Because if you get a twist in that and it doesn't go over it, it won't work properly. Right, what do you want to mount your hook bait on? I always mount my hook bait on what I call... I think they're called threaded bait rings or whatever you want to call them. It's bait screws, threaded bait screws, whatever you want to call them. I used to use originally a bog standard bait screw, which is like that. Which there's nothing wrong with those. But what I found is the more angles that you can get in your rig, the more it allows that fish to trip itself up. So what I prefer is the bait screws with the extra little ring on it. I think King of the Pond do them, Nash do them, Tasker do them, maybe other people do them. You get that bait screw, and all you're doing is you're putting that through there like that, okay? So we've got there like that, okay? What is important now is to put that over there without a twist in it. That needs to go in a straight line over the top. Now that's perfect. That goes straight over the top and on. If that is too small, it won't go over the top, but it's practice. Honestly, the more you practice, the easier it is. When I sit at home, I can do 10 of these in about 10 minutes. So when MotoGP qualifying or F1 qualifying's on, that's what I do, because I can do them almost. That needs to go over the top, right? So it sits like that. And you just pull it down, and I always do it just to where the curve, where it starts to bend. If you imagine the loop you've tied is too big, that will be down there, which means it naturally is more off the bottom. The smaller your loop is, the closer that knot will be to it, which allows you to fish it tight to the bottom. And it's just a matter of practice. Practice makes perfect. The more you practice, when I've done one, I can literally do every one, so that when I put the loop over, it just goes over with a bit of push, and literally that knot will end up like that. So it's so close. I'm going to give this, take it away. So all you need to do is, that is how it should sit like that, okay? That's how it should sit. Now some people, for some reason, don't break the coating, and I think that's absolutely crazy, because I want that coating breaking to fish at 360. So all I do is get my fingertips and break the coating, and I ain't got no nails. You break the coating, because what that allows is, if you imagine, that allows that to spin, whatever. A little tip here is, when you've broken the coating, just do that a couple of times. You're undoing the fibres. You're never going to break the fibres. Always use your nails. Never use any of these horrible stripping tools, because that is only as good as every single fibre being there. Once you lose one fibre, it just breaks. So those horrible... I mean, I've got no nails, but I can strip the right stuff. So that allows that hook link to spin. Whatever way that carp comes, that can spin into its mouth, okay? So that will always spin like that. So all I do is, when I'm at home, I break it like that, I cut it off. I don't know how long that is. That's whatever that... Cut that off. So that's made at home. So I make 10 of those at home. Now the thing is with this, I'll just show you the variation a bit. The thing is with this, if you imagine you do not steam that hook length, right? When you cast out, let's imagine you've cast out this rig. Just another thing as well, whenever I know that those airball pop-ups take one of those to sink them properly. A lot of people critically balance their baits. The problem with critically balancing baits is that carp are big old pigs, right? And as they come in towards it, that bait is it's like trying to grab a ping pong ball in your mouth in the bath. You'll get near it and it'll just bobble away all the time. And honestly, it does not work. I always overshot my pop-ups. I always overshot my pop-up rigs so that it holds it down and it's spinning like that, like an... I don't want it rock solid so it can't lift up, but I want it so that, especially when it gets a bit of silt and crap round it, it is spinning round like that. So when the carp, when it gets near it, isn't bobbling round out of its mouth, but it's enough so it can lift up and then prick down against itself. So I know that one of those pop-ups with one of these shots, it will hold it down, not critically balanced, but it will nail it down, but not overshot it. Always put your shot or your putting so that it doesn't go onto the broken bit of the hook length. So put it right at the end of your hook length. I've never had a hook length break there. You can bite shot on. If you do it on monofilament or fluorocarbon, it crushes it, breaks it. But believe you me, with coated braid, that will never ever break that in a million years. And all that means is that carp, that's got a pivot point. Because in rig books, you will always be the carp. But in reality, that can spin round anywhere. I'll give you this takeaway.
That's because you can come in any angle.
It can come in at any angle. It can spin round at any angle and prick itself. That is so good. Now you imagine, and I'll show you this, right? If you don't steam that coated braid, right? You cast out, right? Okay. What happens is, as it hits the bottom, your hook length lays like that. Okay. Right. Now I am not saying that the carp will go that's a hook length, but the problem is that carp can piss about with your hook bait all like that, and it's got so much movement until it actually pricks itself there. That's a lot of movement for the carp. Now let's remember, right, that is not a sharpened hook. There's no lead on there, and I didn't pull that. That has pricked itself straight away on that. But that's a lot of movement. That's a lot of pissing about.
You always use a size 5?
I use a bigger hook. I like. Now, when you steam a hook length, and I'll tie this to that in a moment, what it means is when that hits the bottom, that hook length will kick out at full extension like that and sit like that. That carp ain't got much before it pricks itself against that hook length. Now, so what you see is with people who don't have stiff hook lengths, they get shorter and shorter and shorter. The problem with that is sometimes it's so short the carp can't get it in its mouth. That, and I'll tie it up with that is absolutely perfect. So that is a steamed hook length. So I always steam my hook lengths at home over a kettle. The problem with steaming them at the lakeside is that it's inevitable when you steam up the lakeside. So when you steam at home in a plastic kettle, you can run them up and down that plastic kettle. And what you need to do when you steam the hook length is, as you're steaming it, rotate that hook length in your fingers so that all the hook length gets steamed. Believe you me, it makes a massive difference if all the sides of the hook length are steamed.
Just like underneath it.
I steam all of it. So I just simply, when I'm at home if I was at home now, imagine that's not on. I'll take that off because I know it said Yorkshire, and I should have said Scottish, really. I save up. So I'm at home.
Only one foreigner here.
Yeah. If I'm at home and I've got my kettle boiling, I literally, and these are why these are great, I hold that with my fingers, the kettle spout is there, and I just turn it round in my fingers like that, and I steam all the hook length. You put it down, and instead of being like that hook length will be like that. They sit like that. They are absolutely stiff as anything.
So you never pre-tie your length as well, you just do that to whatever you're fishing on though.
Yeah, so that literally is how stiff they are. And when you're fishing a time up, they go super stiff. So that is.
Change the length. Do you always have the same length?
I'll show you this in a minute exactly. And remember that carp has not got a lot of pissing about with before it pricks itself against.
Move a wee bit, then it's wide.
It pricks itself, yeah. So as soon as I tie 10 of those up, and it doesn't take me very long at all. And then I put them in a rig box. Don't matter what, as long as a rig box is whatever, that's how that goes. I get my. Pardon?
Do you ever put putty on your rig?
No.
No, never.
It sits beautifully. It sits beautifully, believe you me. Okay. Yeah, you got all that. You get all of that, Matt. Cheers, mate. Okay, so this is the end tackle I've got. So this is the end tackle.
You didn't pay for them, Rod, to get the jewels.
What? No, I didn't pay for that. Yeah, no, I didn't pay for that. Right, so this is the end tackle I use, and again, it's about percentages. For carp fishing, when I talk about length of hook length, all I'm talking about is the bit from the shot to the loop. So that potentially is a 12-inch hook length, but all I'm concerned about is the bit from that to the loop knot. So when I'm fishing over mush and tightly baited particles and crap like that, that literally is how long my hook length will be. When I'm fishing for what I would say average, no, not average size, 15 to 35 pound carp, my hook length will generally be about that long. The only time I ever use a longer hook length is when I'm fishing for bigger fish, say at Nash's Church Lake. I tend to use it probably where it's that, I'd have a longer hook length, so that would be where the loop is. So it just gives it a little bit, but it's stiff. It just allows a little bit more play for the carp to tilt itself up. But my average length hook length, and I'll show you, is about that long.
And when you said because of bigger fish you go longer, is that just on the basis you
Of the size of
far away apart?
No, no, it's just the size.
Because they can suck further.
They've got deeper bodies, and
Followed off their loop.
they do need a bit more. You watch them in the edge, and sometimes short hooks ever go, and they just can't get the bait in the mouth. So I prefer a slightly. But for the majority of my fishing, I would say 95% of my fishing, my hook length will be right. It's about percentages. So I've tied my bait. I've tied it up at home. It's stiff. I've got a balancing pot. I'm pretty anal in that. Even though I know that works, I can't chuck it out without making sure. So I will check it in the balancing pot that sits like that. And I can't understand why people go in the edge. Just take yourself a little tub or something and just try it in the edge like that. So I've got that there. Just 1 second. I just need a quick. Too much coffee, you guys.
To be continued.
Oh, it's a wee bit chilly there, eh? I've had enough.
Yeah, where's that rig box charge? Anyone want a rig? £2.
Check out the food cooking over there. That's obscene.
Next level barbecue, that is.
If you notice this, I have a little tub here of shots and bits of silicone.
Push me back to me, so just roll me back to me swim later.
First thing I do is just push that down the hook length. Well, I didn't want to use that. I've been looking in there for an hour for that. That just goes down the hook length. Like that. Okay. Okay, that is purely and simply for this, right? The first thing I do is that's the big loop swivel there. That goes through. All I'm doing is tying what I will call a loop, I don't know, a loop knot or whatever you want to call it. Just a loop, and I tie that 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just a straight grin knot, yeah, grin, 4-turn grin knot, okay? Don't pull it too tight to start with. Make sure, I always like a loop there, because that loop will sit properly. Get that, pull that tight. Oops, that's how good your leads are. We'll find that lead. There's a Yorkshireman in there. Get them for free, but I don't lose them. Yeah. Okay. So I've tied. That's a 4-turn grinner. Get some super glue or rig glue or whatever you want to call it. Okay. Okay. All I do is add a little bit of rig glue to that there. Like that, like that. It's always more difficult to do it when you're trying to do it like this rather than stood up or whatever. I get my scissors, I trim off.
There's no Blue Peter video without super glue.
I know, yeah. Okay, just trim it off.
Do you ever use quick links, Jules?
No, never use click links. Never use click links. And then just slide that over there, over the top of that, to sheath the knot. Literally, that's all I do. Okay? So you sheath the knot there. Believe you me, it is possible if you leave that tag end for it just to catch. Not very often, but it might just catch. And for the sake of a bit of a silicone, that's all you're doing is taking the percentages out each time. Put the lead back on there. Okay, that, and believe you me, I've caught carp to just under 50 pounds. That grinner knot will not move. It will not slip or anything like that. That will. All that can do is tighten up on itself. It will never ever break. I promise you that if you use the right materials. Okay, so you've there got. How did that happen? You have got that's how that sits like that. The thing with that is you've got a double loop there, so it's protecting your leg. When you cast out, that will literally spin round like that, and it will never ever tangle. Right? as it hits the bottom, and I always have foam, and I'll show you how it works. All that does is that will always hit the bottom like that, and it will always kick out like that. It kicks out on the bottom like that. And it just sits absolutely beautiful. And that, whatever way the carp comes, it just gives it that little bit of movement, then it pricks itself against. It's like a bit of a bungee rig. It's that a little bit of movement, then it'll prick itself against it. And that is as simple. That you don't need to put putty on it, stuff like that. All that. If you put putty in that, do you think that putty will nail it down? It doesn't. You don't need putty. That will sink anyway. If you get a slight bend in it, just use your fingers just to get a bit of generate, a bit of heat, because you can always. And that will just make it straighter again. But that is what you want. Is you want the point between the lead and the hook point. You want that to be a straight line. That hook sits like that, and whatever way that carp comes, that is always in a position to hook itself. And it sits like that at the bottom. You drop in the edge, and it sits like that. And that is as simple as that. You can fish it if it's a clear bottom. You can fish it with an inline set. It's up to you. But I use it like that, and I don't feel that I need to have those cog systems and stuff like that. You know, I think sometimes you're making it more complicated than it needs to be. So that's how that sits. And
always use a flat pair lead.
Always use a flat pair lead. I like how it sits. The last bit of this as well is the foam, and it's all about the percentages. Now, first thing when people see this foam, they think, all right, yeah, it's trying to be trendy, camo and everything up. The reason is not like that. If any of you have got
the sun getting in there.
stop the sun getting into it. If people have got bags of PVA foam that are crushed, these aren't, it's called PVA foam. It's not actually PVA foam. It's actually wheat germ nuggets. It's not PVA at all. But we call it PVA foam. It's just nuggets, really. The thing with these is they're only as good as their buoyancy. That is very good, but once these get crushed together and get sunlight, and it gets like that, and they do get, and probably some of you have got the stuff. Think, oh, I've got my foam. That is about fuck all good, to be honest. That is absolutely that is no good whatsoever. And all that stuff.
In the green.
Yeah, you can take that one. Yeah, that is no good whatsoever. If I left all that in a plastic bag outside, it's amazing. It just tightens up because sunlight's on it. And if you leave it unsealed, things with this is, it's so easy when you're out there just to put the top on it like that, you don't get any rain on it. And whatever tape you cover, it just stops it getting damaged.
No, but the camo is carpy.
The camo's carpy, yeah. Smart, yeah, smart. That's nearest to getting to carpy. The reason I use different colour foam as well is that you'll see this when you cast out. If you're fishing beyond 50 or 60 yards, if you fish two pieces of the same coloured foam and it pops off, you don't know whether one piece has come off or two pieces. But by having two different colour foam, you know whether both bits of foam have come off. And I also prefer colours because white sometimes look like a feather of a bird, so I always prefer coloured foam. The best foam is the Solar and Gardner colour one, the Castaway one. Some of the people, they spend £300, £400 on a rod and they say, God, I've got a bag of foam that came with me LCD TV. I said, have you tested it? Oh no, it's the same. Jesus, some of it does not dissolve. When people use foam, most people use PVA foam like this. They get that like that, they put it on there, they lick it, they squeeze it round like that, and they go, all right, that's it. Now that is absolutely a bag of shite, right? That is of no good whatsoever. I could guarantee when you cast out that'll never ever tangle. But if you're worried about that, just put one of those hook protectors on it. You'll never get. What happens is that is like bread flake. Anybody of you fished years ago? It's like bread flake, and it forms a sticky mess. There's no buoyancy in it, so it sits on the bottom like that. Even unless it's really warm, all you end up with is a big load of gunge on your hook point. And that hook point is the most safe carp rig ever because that hook point is covered in crap. That is of no use whatsoever. There's no buoyancy in it. You're not going to hook any carp on it. The thing is, eventually when you wind it in, that'll pull off in the weed. You'll wind it and you'll never even know. Yeah. Believe you me, that is a waste of time. So if you put your stuff on like, bloody hell, you have to cut that off. It's,
you not reinflate that?
Yeah. The Scottish one.
Who know that tight?
Right. The way to
put 5 boilies out.
the way to use PVA foam is PVA nuggets. Is put it through like that to start with. Okay, so you've hooked your hook on like that. Okay. Now get your other coloured foam, whatever colour you want to use, blue, purple, orange, whatever you want to do. Lick the end of each of it.
It looks like a carp.
and squeeze the ends, only the ends only, right, the ends only, okay? What that means is when it hits the bottom, you've got super buoyancy, okay? What you've got there is you've got a hole in the middle. I'm not bothered about that PVA foam dissolving. I couldn't give a toss about it dissolving. All I want is it to come off. If you've got a hole in the middle, what happens is water will find a way in and it pops it off. And what happens is it will always be the one that's on the back of you. So the first thing that will pop off, I guarantee you, every time will be the purple one, because that's on the back of the hook. What happens is that the water gets up the middle, it forces the purple one off. As soon as the purple one comes off, literally 20 seconds later, the green one will pop off, and that hook will just go like that, will kick itself out to full extension, and it will sit like that on the bottom. And it's absolutely perfect. I will always wait till 2 bits of foam will come off. If 2 bits of foam don't come off, I'll wind it in, no matter how good the cast is. And redo it. It's that percentage game. You've got 2-3 grand of rods and reels sat out there, and you are not winding it in for the sake of 1 bit of PVA foam. And it's like, you've got to get all your percentages right. So I wait till 2 bits of foam will come off, and if 2 bits of foam don't come off, or I'm not convinced they've come off, I'll wind it in again. Generally, they'll come off within about 10 seconds at this time of year. If the harder you squeeze it, the longer it takes. You just got to use a bit of common sense. The good thing as well is it shows you exactly where your hook bait is. And the number of times I've cast out and I thought that is spot on. Put the rod down, got my bag of boilies ready, and it's popped up. I thought, oh God, I wasn't as good with that cast. So it actually teaches you when you need to overcast, undercast, because that foam will come up in a straight line. Clearly, if you've got a massive undertow, you might get some movement, but generally, in most waters, where that foam comes off is exactly where your hook bait is. So generally, I've got my pile of boilies or whatever next to me on my spom rod, and as soon as that foam comes off, I spom on top of it, because you know exactly where it is, and it's great to bait up against. But, you know, it's just these little edges that make a massive difference.
What would you fish that over, like a spready boilies?
I fish that over mush, I fish it as a single bait at range, I fish it over boilies, I fish it over... If I was fishing here tonight, there would be 3 rods on that. Two might be on white pop-ups and 1 would be on the key, but that is my 100% kick-off point. That is my 100% starting point rig. Now, there's absolutely nothing there that I've done that none of you can't do. But I tell you what, every single little thing is a percentage getting right. So every single thing from the fluorocarbon to the lead clip to that, there are probably about 15 things in that equation that give you an advantage over the bloke next door. Because most carp anglers are naturally lazy. They naturally say to themselves, it'll do. Right? The best thing you can do is have people on a lake who go, that'll do. The last thing you want are people who care. So if somebody comes along and does all that, whether he's doing all that or I'm doing all that, I've got no advantage.
4.5 hours, I care.
Yes, so you care. But believe you me,
You're the one that's caught.
yeah, people will say, oh, just any old pop-up will do, I never need to check. You know, I will go, because I have so little time, I have to do so much work in advance. So that's an airball pop-up. I'll know how much buoyancy that is in 12 hours time in comparison. I know that that will still be on. So it's all the work you do beforehand makes you a better angler. There's nothing there that any of you can't do. And every single little thing, as I've learned, nothing there really is what people have showed me. That's everything there you are learning from the blank days, weeks, hours I've suffered on. Same as I learnt from, you know, Andy Littlewood, I've had loads of blanks, but when I've come and copied in, I've saved myself. But, you know, it's a progression, isn't it? Everything you read saves you having to dump...
Did you say, like, the rig ring was better than, like, bait floss?
Absolutely. That to me...
for speed or just for...
No, I just...
Movement.
Movement. I just think the movement as well. And I don't want to be pissing about with bait floss and tying loops and stuff like that. That just... It's just more movement. It allows it to spin back. The more angles there are for the carp to deal with, the more it can trip itself up. Yeah. So your average multi-rig, which I showed, is there. All I'm doing is adding a little bit of tubing to create more of a... It's you know, it's not that will catch carp straight away, but just adding that little bit of tubing to create another bit of an angle trips the carp up. Now some people will say, oh, just bung it out in the middle and that'll do. Carp aren't that clever. Well, I am not that way. I cannot sit there, chuck them out and hope for the best. If I do all that and that does not go up, when I drive away from a lake, if I've blanked or caught, that's not the major thing for me. I know whether I have tried my hardest. If I've tried my hardest and blanked because I'm not on the fish, I can live with that. But if I've gone and spent 24 hours fishing and I think, you lazy bastard, Julian, you were tweeting or reading a magazine, you were chatting to your mates, I can't live with that because I've wasted 24 hours of my very precious life. You know, I can't see the point in spending $3 grand on tackle and then tweeting or reading a book.
I just stick to porn 2 seconds and I'm back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's all about care enough. Motivation to care enough is the best thing. You know, there are some people who will look at that and they'll go, that's actually, you just don't need to do all that. You just need to do X, Y, and Z. Now, that's great, because the guy that thinks that, he ain't got an advantage of the guy that goes, you know what, actually, there is something on that PVA foam. I actually might get rid of that bag of crap foam that's in my bag, go and buy some solar foam tomorrow, get myself a box so it's not crapped up, put the lid on it, stuff like that. That, you know, that's the difference between a Terry Earn and all those. They make it sound easy because they take all this for granted. But if you actually looked at the way Terry Earn fishes, what you think is just normal, he will go to infinite lengths to make sure it's right. He can't get across because he's not a technical writer. But believe you me, every single little bit of his setup, nobody catches more carp by being lethargic and lazy. If they do,
attention to detail.
Attention to detail. It's percentages, you know. And if you are not on the fish, you can fish like this and not catch anything. But there will come a time when you're on fish, and that day you will catch 7 fish rather than 3 fish. And it's, you know, I've said this before, it's a law of averages. There will be time after time after time I cannot get on the fish. Can't do anything about that. But the time that I'm on them, I want to multiply. I want to catch a fish, right? As soon as that carp's in the net, I don't want to be pissing about tying a rig up. As soon as that carp's in the net, I cut that rig off. One of those goes back on again. That bait's on its head. Set it all up. Then I'll take the pictures. It's, you know, that's why I take 2 landing nets. You know, there are red letter days, and you can have red letter days, but there won't be red letter days if you only catch 1 carp. It's a matter of multiplying your chances. And honestly, it's that simple. It is that simple. Carp fishing is not hard. It's just a matter of, you know, getting your priorities right. What is matter to you? All these edges rolled into one become a massive advantage. So that's about it. I don't know if that's been useful or not.
Julian, that's been absolutely fantastic. Listen, we're going to take a break. There's 100 and something people watching this live. There's people saying stuff like, look at this man's passion. I've never seen somebody so passionate.
Yeah.
Just sat here. And explained what he does. So guys, thank you to Julian. We're going to come back in a minute after some food and some more beers to sober me up, and we're going to do a live Q&A. So guys who are watching, all 100 and something of you, thank you very much. And Julian, give this man a round of applause.
Cheers. Thank you very much.